Grady. John, you, the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, is with us right now. And John, let me ask you a little bit about the requirements here. One way or the other, he has to put up this amount of money, $355 million. I guess you can put it on collateral or borrow against it. But the bottom line is, even the borrowing against it part is kind of difficult given these arrangements because he can't go to a bank for loans, whether they're collateralized or not. It's a mess. I don't understand it. What are his options?
I fully expect that what the Attorney General said is not going to matter in the end, because she's only talking about what happens like Trump were to run for it and try to go down to Florida and say, come get me. So what really happens is Trump can either pay the damages now to the state, as you said, $350 million. And then there's, I think, another $100 million of interest on top of that, or he can appeal. But to appeal, he has to post a bond in the amount of the damages. It's a compromise in the law to make sure that he has the right to appeal, but that should he lose on appeal, the other side gets the money that they were originally due. Now, the problem, as you said, is where's Trump going to come up with that kind of money? Now, most people don't go ahead and just deposit $350 million when they lose a case. They go get a bond, they get a loan, they get a bank to send a letter saying that they're good for the cash, good for the amount. And I think that's what Trump's going to have to do here. He's going to have to put together a consortium of lenders or some of his own money, and then that will be what stands behind his appeal. But he will certainly appeal this case. Once he appeals, the Attorney General is not allowed to try to seize anything.
So let's say she threatened that, she can always seize, I'm paraphrasing here, John, she can seize one of those buildings if he's, dragging his feet on this. I think you have 30 days to your point. So a little bit more than 3 weeks he has to do this. So what do you make of that? Can she actually do that while we're waiting for this?
She could do that, but I think the Attorney General is revealing her partisanship, her interest in hounding Trump, because what Attorney General should say is these are the same rules that apply to everybody. If you don't take an appeal and get a stay of everything, then you have to pay. Anybody has to pay who loses a decision, and that applies to President Trump too. So to start saying, oh, we're going to come after him and grab buildings and sell them, that's like talking about someone being convicted of a crime, and then the Attorney General comes out and says, and we're going to send the U.S. Marshals for you after you run for it and don't show up at jail on time. It's actually, I think it looks terrible for an Attorney General to talk about a case like this. Instead, President Trump's going to appeal. Once he does, within this 30-day period, then all of the things that the Attorney General is talking about are frozen. She's not allowed to do anything she hopes she could do while the appeal is going on.
Let me switch gears, if you don't mind, John. The president is speaking, that is President Biden, of this student loan relief that he's providing, about $1.2 billion worth, 153,000 students and or their parents will be rewarded for this. It's grown to about $138 billion in student loan debt relieved under his presidency. The Supreme Court, as I was mentioning earlier in this show, had already involved itself in this to say, Mr. President, you can't do that. That kind of decision is made in the legislative branch, specifically the House, where all spending comes from. But he is still saying more to come. He's still promising that as he makes remarks in Culver City, California. Let me ask you what I've been asking others. Can he keep doing this? Because he keeps doing this.
Having clerked at the Supreme Court, having spent a lot of my career watching the Supreme Court, I can tell you the Supreme Court doesn't like things that are unconstitutional, but what they don't like even more is when the other branches try to evade them and try to deny their opinions. And that's what Joseph Biden's doing here. He's already lost, as you said, last year. And now he's just seeing if he can get away with, well, maybe I'll just forgive a smaller amount. But what the Supreme Court's going to see is here's a president who lost and is basically defying us, defying the court, and just trying to do it in smaller pieces. Now, what the Biden administration is going to say is, well, we're not really canceling all the debt. We're just modifying the terms. But if you're modifying the terms in a way that equals you don't have to pay, how is that really different from what the Supreme Court struck down just last year?
Well, here's the rub then. What do they do to say, no, you can't do that? And they don't do anything. And as you said, they've decided this matter. They've got to be ticked off. I was going to say another word, which you can't say on a family show. But They are upset that you keep doing this, Mr. Rez. So, can they force the issue? Can the judicial branch actually freeze that money that's actually our debt? It's just being added to our debt. What are their options?
So this is one actually important constraint on the judiciary is they are not, like Congress and the president, allowed to go out and grab an issue. The thing that makes the courts different is that they're passive and they're neutral. So they have to wait for someone else to take action. So what will have to happen is somebody will have to bring suit again, just like they did in the case from last year. And if you remember, Neil, I think we talked about this on the show. Actually, it was hard to find the right plaintiff. And actually, the Biden administration tried to claim no one was allowed to sue because nobody's really harmed except taxpayers in general. But I expect that one of the states will bring a lawsuit. And once that gets into court, a trial judge, I think, is going to immediately put an end to this.
Just amazing. You could be a business reporter if you wanted to take a pay cut, John, but thank you very much. It's good seeing you again.
Good seeing you, too.
John.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.